Record. All right, well, welcome everyone, and thank you so much for joining us for this very first author session of our brand new 2026 book club. We're so excited that you are here, and we cannot wait to continue this journey with you and to grow with you over the year. And we're really excited that you signed up to be part of this first session with Kimberly. And before we begin, I want to introduce you to our program managers who made this possible tonight. We have Deb Winters, Kelly Goodman, and Bernadette Ferretra. Thank you for your leadership and support of this book club and for having the amazing idea to do this. So thank you, thank you, thank you. And then we are currently finalizing the February and March book selections. We'll be sharing those details very soon, along with the access to a very special website created just for this book club that'll have tips, tricks, links, and whatnot for you. Meg's got her wine there for us to see. And then just a quick reminder, now that you've signed up for the January one, you don't have to sign up for every single event. So as you see the sign up pages come through for February and March and subsequent months, you're already in. You don't need to sign up again. You'll get all the emails, you get all the reminders, etc., etc. You can, of course, share that link with all your friends and family. We would love to have them as part of this as well. And then again, we're so glad that you're here. And I am going to kick things over to our amazing moderators. But I do want to share with you that we've got some prepared questions for Kimberly. However, if you have questions that you would like to ask, please feel free to throw them in the chat, and Bernadette is going to keep an eye on that, and she will be happy to read them for you. We will also have an opportunity at the end for you to ask Kimberly some questions if you have them. So with that, welcome, and thank you, Kimberly, for being our first author, and I'm going to hand it over to Bernadette.
Hello, everyone. Thanks for joining us this evening. Kimberly Warner is a filmmaker, author, and patient advocate whose work explores what it means to live fully in a body that doesn't always feel well. After studying pre-med and biology at Colorado College and pursuing graduate training in naturopathic and classic Chinese medicine, she veered from a clinical path toward a creative one, trading diagnostics for documentary and turning questions of health into stories of meaning. In 2015, a rare neurological condition that I am totally going to say incorrectly, Malde
debarkment.
Thank you, syndrome, upended her sense of gravity and direction, quite literally. That seismic shift became the seed of Unfixed, a multimedia platform she founded to amplify stories of people living with chronic illness and disability. Since then, her work has grown into a celebrated portfolio of award-winning docuseries, short films, podcasts, memoir, and essays, all championing the radical notion that healing and brokenness can coexist, that sometimes broken is the fix. Kimberly's storytelling has earned honors from the Invisible Disabilities Association, Healthy Voices, Rainbow Advocacy, and Life on the Level. She has screened at Harvard Medical School, contributed to innovative medical curricula, and serves on advisory boards that center the patient's voice in healthcare and design. She lives in rural Oregon with her husband, David, where they tend their small farm between creative projects. When she's not editing films, harvesting calendula, or writing for her beloved Substack audience, she's practicing what she preaches, loosening her grip, staying curious, and letting uncertainty become a place of peace. Her debut book, Unfixed, a memoir of family, mystery, and the currents that carry you home, earned a Publisher's Weekly editor's pick and quickly became a bestseller. It is now finding its way into the hands and hearts of readers everywhere searching for steadiness inside their own unsteady lives. Welcome.
What a lovely intro. Thank you.
I think they're going to start with the questions now.
Okay. I
Unless
just
you
want
want to
to welcome
say
everyone. Thank
something.
you so much for this opportunity. I feel I love just being able to see all of your faces and looking into your eyes, even if they're small on my screen, but it's really special to be together right now. So thank you.
Yes. Well, thank you. We're very excited that you're here and that you shared your story with us. Um, so without further ado, we've got some questions for you. Um, so Kimberly, what first sparked the idea for this book?
Hmm. Well, I would say the spark was absolutely a necessity. It wasn't a, I would like to write a book. It was 2018. I was 6 years into no diagnosis, living with a experience in my body that was tormenting me like a nagging child, this sensation of rocking, bobbing, and swaying 24/7, living with insomnia, still not regulating my nervous system around all of these sensations and the experiences that go with it, which is like heightened vision, sensitivity to light, sensitivity to noise. So I was isolating largely, barely making it across the street, and lost a lot of my career at that point, lost a lot of friends at that point, and just holding on to the threads of what little might be left of my life. What was happening, though, was a rebuilding of an understanding of my paternity. And that was something that came out also during the time that this neurological disorder happened. And so while there was a lot of shock and anxiety around the revelation of this story, there was also a lot of magic and love. And so I sat down at my husband's computer. I didn't even have a computer anymore. I had gotten rid of screens. I was just living the hermit life. And he was at work all day, and I just thought, I have to write this down so I don't forget it. And it really was originally just to get a timeline out because there was too many magical things that were happening that I thought I would just forget someday. So between I would write a paragraph and then I would lay down on the ground. I would write another paragraph, I would lay down on the ground. I was this sensation of bobbing and swaying still really dysregulated me, and I hadn't found a stability that could hold it all yet. So it was arduous, but as I started writing, I found a perspective on what had all happened to me. And it, like I said, this was 8 years already, or 28, sorry, 4 years, 2018. So 4 years of living with this. And I had been so immersed in it, as many of you probably experience, or as a caregiver, it's like when there's a chronic illness, it's everything to you. So I hadn't gotten a lot of perspective yet. And the writing helped me start to feel some of that perspective and also start to see a through line of oh, there's a narrative here, almost like I'm being carried. So it grew out of necessity purely. And then when I was done, and I didn't stop. I would, had my erratic way of writing, but I wrote about 325 pages and then I put it on a hard drive and I put the hard drive away, never thinking that it would ever see the light of day again. It was just like putting a part of my brain somewhere so that I knew it was, you know, alive and well. And I left it for 3 years. And it wasn't until, and Christy knows the book, that I was helping a ALS patient, Dylan Shanahan. I was helping him with his memoir, and I just started thinking more about storytelling and how we shape the narrative arc of our own lives. And then I was talking about it with my family, and they said, "Can we read what you wrote 3 years ago? You never shared that with anybody." And I dug it out, printed it out for them so they had a hard copy, and they were the ones that said, "Kimberly, there's more here than just your own personal story, your own suffering, your own understanding. You probably should consider sharing this." And so I thought, oh gosh, okay, there's going to be 10 readers. I'll share it online on Substack, and maybe some family or friends will want to read it. So I serialized it over 2 years. And over that 2 years, I went from 10 readers to 4,000 readers. And so this was never intended. Your question, Kelly, was, what sparked it? And I truly don't even know. I think it was out of my own personal design and something that was just supposed to happen.
No, that's amazing. And it sounds like, like a lot of people in the ALS community, you have to advocate for yourself, which you did, right? And you persevered. So those are like two strong, um, the words that come to mind about your journey.
Yeah.
Um, so okay, so then having said all of that, aside from yourself, like which character, or maybe it is yourself, was the most challenging for you to write about, and why?
Mm. Wow, I haven't been asked that question before. I love it. I love it when there's fresh ones. I actually, my instinct, I think I would say my mom, because there's some tenderness there, and especially, of course, around the paternity story. And when I first got the DNA test, she was as shocked as we were. She thought when she had this little one night fling that she was already pregnant. And so when she told my dad this has happened, they were both like, it's the 70s. My dad had plenty of affairs already, and they just let it be because they thought, well, you're already pregnant anyway. Let's just move on with our lives. And so they never pursued anything. I think there was a suspicion because later in my teen years, as have you read in the book, there was a request from my father that I learn about this. But I really think that, oh my gosh, what was the question? Oh, the character. Yeah. So
Yeah.
when I first found out about the DNA test, my mom was like, who are you going to tell? And why does this need to be public? And do you need to share it with other family members? And there was a lot of her own, she had her process with it. And at first it was very shy and a little bit of shame and concern about how it would appear to everybody. That was 2014. And I will honestly say, I did my book tour 4 months ago, and she was in the front row at the launch party with tears running down her face. And she's my biggest PR agent now, handing books out. And I mean, she's a champion. So my intention writing though was to not malign her. I wanted to find the love. And I did feel hurt. There were periods that we had to go through and healing that we had to go through, even where I felt like I didn't need her to say I'm sorry because she didn't know, but they also sort of, it's the sin of omission, they didn't pursue and the truth. And we had some work to do around that. And so I've read memoirs that feel a lot more like finger pointing, and there's nothing wrong with that either, but I didn't want that to be how this felt. And I didn't want anyone that I wrote about, especially my mom, watching how she integrated this story for herself. I didn't want her to walk away feeling any shame. I wanted her to feel like she felt seen. And I'll share a great little short story. Just a couple weeks ago, I was talking to my mom in the car. She has been diagnosed with Parkinson's, and so her cognition is slowing. So when I do hear something from her, it's precious. And we were talking about the book, and she said, "Kim, I've read the book 3 times now." And I said, "Mom, this is not just my book. This is like you gave birth to me. This story never would have happened if you hadn't given birth to me and raised me and told me the stories that you told me and loved me the way that you did." And she said, in sort of a broken cognition sort of way, she said, "Well, Kim, your book gave birth to me."
Hmm.
And I said, "Mom, what did you say? Did I hear that?" And she said, "Your book gave birth to me." So that's all to say that I do think she felt very seen, maybe in ways that she wasn't even able to see herself. So,
Hmm. Well, thank you for sharing that. It sounds like it was very meant to be, and you did the right thing for your relationship too.
yeah.
Yes.
Um,
Before you go with
okay.
the next question, Kelly, I'm going to get two comments in the chat or questions in the chat related to the first question. This is from Maggie. Kimberly, how are you feeling these days physically?
So I still am dizzy as ever. What's changed is, and today is an especially dizzy day, usually around ovulation, or right on the edge of menopause. So I don't know what this is, but I get some pretty intense flares while I'll just grab onto the desk and things will start to roll for me. That said, my nervous system doesn't react to it anymore. And that is a huge difference than the first 8 years of living this, where every time, I would feel an increase of symptoms or just the constancy of the symptoms, I would grip around them, and the gripping and the resistance itself would make it worse. So, I even went through like a protracted panic attack, I would say easily 2 years, where I wasn't sleeping. I was hyper focused on the sensations and hyper vigilant. And so through this, my brain has finally learned that I'm not in danger. And because of that messaging of I'm not in danger, there is a deeper sense of peace that sits inside of this motion now. And I'm okay if this is forever. I don't know about if I'm a little old lady wobbling around the street. It might be weird, but I'm not reacting to it anymore. So I'm dizzy, but I'm comfortable with it. If those two things can coincide, I am a living, breathing uh, example of how discomfort and peace can live side by side.
Thank you. Thank you
Mhm.
for sharing that. And Meg's question, well, Meg's comment also goes into that it's fantastic that you continue to write, even with the dizziness. That must have been a very challenging time.
Thank you for saying that, Meg. It was, and it brought up also sort of, they talk about be careful to not re-traumatize yourself, as I was going through some of the early dizzy symptoms and the early emergency room visits and all of that. Um, I wrote it in present tense also because I needed to kind of go back and meet myself there, because as we know, when we're scared, we often fly out of our bodies. And so I think somehow by revisiting this, I was trying to bring myself back into my body, as scary as it was.
Thank you.
Sure, thanks. So, kind of talking about like the themes and the messages related to your story, was there a central message or a feeling that you hoped readers would take away? And then, additionally, were there any themes that emerged unexpectedly that you wrote?
Okay. I'm going to write that unexpected. This is my memory. This is brain fog. Unexpected. So I'll answer the first one first, but the main theme, we come right back to the title, and I questioned whether it was going to be too confusing of a word, but I'm glad I stuck with it, because largely this is a theme that just continues on in my life. It's part of the wellness world now that is so much it's an economy instead of an actual practice. It's this culture of of self-betterment and self-improvement at the cost of our own contentment. It's like correcting instead of caring. So I feel like the messaging that I'm trying to untangle through this book and through my own body even is how much we can just live with what is. And that doesn't negate the the other part of ourselves that wants to improve and grow and change and dream, but it can also live alongside a deep contentment. And I feel like there's it's been out of balance in our culture. And of course, there's the Eastern thought that's come in a lot with meditation and be here now and all of that. And there are places for that on the yoga mat and in the meditation room. But when you live with chronic illness, that's a constant question. And we're always being pushed up against the resistance to it. So we get this 24/7 opportunity to either push back on it a little bit and go, no, I don't want you, or surrender to it and see if there's a transformation that can happen in the surrendering. So my story largely is about the transformation that can come through surrender. So unexpectedly, what surprised me is, and I've heard this just through reflections of people that have read it, is that it people read it as a love story. And not just a love story of this time, but of a love story that can transcend the dimensions of time and space. So that it largely, I mean, it feels like a love story that my biological father and my father that raised me are not, neither of them are alive, but it feels in a way that it's our love story, our continued relationship. And that, so the messaging is that, this kind of love, especially with family and these intimate relationships that are living in our blood, they continue beyond the grave. And that to me has been a very surprising part of this journey. Even on the book tour, some magical things were happening. I've always thought, like, show me the ghosts, like show up at the end of my bed. I'd love to see a ghost. But my dad, he died when I was 18 years old, and like, he never showed up. And so I'm starting to come back to this feeling that their presence is very much alive, and also even directing my own life. And I'm less in control than I thought I was. So it's brought back some fun mystery around what happens to us when we exit this plane.
I have to admit, it certainly is a love story in very many ways for most of us. Um, you've already addressed this at some level, but what was the most difficult scene or chapter to write? And then additionally, how do you handle writer's block or self-doubt?
Mm. The most difficult scene was the one where I was in year one, not even what the heck is going on with my brain, on Orcas Island, away from home, on a photo shoot, hoping that this would just all go away as quickly as it came, and it just getting worse and worse and worse, to the point where behind a closed door in a hotel room was, I, I, I thought someone, I mean, it felt, I've never taken LSD, but it felt like somebody had laced something. I mean, there were so many signals happening at once in my body, and I'm sure all catalyzed by extreme anxiety. And I thought I was just dying. I remember 4 a.m, picking up the phone and calling my brother and just saying, I need a voice to tell me that everything is going to be okay, because I have completely lost control of my body, and it's not listening to any of my prayers or I was doing everything under the sun to make it go away, but it refused. So I was scared to go back into that scene and rewrite it, because I can still, even now, I mean, it's like PTSD. I'm sure there's still cellular memory of what was happening in my body at that time. And it felt so out of control, so completely out of control. I've never been so scared in my life. My dad died in a car accident. This was nothing close to the fear that I felt around the loss of him. This was like complete cellular obliteration. Yes. So that was very scary to write. What was your second question?
The second question was writer's block,
Yeah.
self-doubt, putting the hard drive on the shelf for 3 years.
So I have, and maybe you've discovered this in my writing. I I chew on words. I'm very, very deliberate. Things don't flow out of me easily. I wait and listen for my body to tell me what those words are, and sometimes there is nothing. I describe it kind of like sitting on an understocked lake fishing. And you throw the pole in and you wait for 4 days and a word finally comes up. So writing for me, I think sometimes I even feel like English isn't my first language. I was a very quiet child. I was much more of a listener. And so words and sentences, they just don't flow out of me. So I wouldn't say, I don't know if I've ever experienced it as writer's block, because that would mean that there would have to have been a flow in the first place. But for me, it's more of just, that's like writer, it's just like snail pace, and having patience with myself to go, this is the only sentence that's coming out today, and or going for a walk and letting the sentence spin around in my head while I'm walking. And so I've because of the dizziness and the way I've learned to work with my nervous system, I don't get anxious around it anymore. I don't get angry at myself. I have a lot of grace around, like, it's a dizzy day. Let's just go eat brownies instead. So, it's 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 a process, and it's a slow one. If I had to be on a deadline, I would never have written this book in the first place. As far as the self-doubt goes, that's, I think because I was going at such a slow pace and I was assimilating what I was writing and learning at the same time, I didn't doubt that, not this, it just felt right. People talk about the flow state, and I don't think I've ever experienced it until this book. And it was, in the writing, and then now also in the sharing and doing the book tour, I feel like there's something where I'm not in the driver's seat and I'm just on the ride of my life, and it's taking me wherever it needs to go. So it doesn't even feel like mine, if that sounds weird, but it's like there's not this, so there's so no room for self-doubt in there, because it's not mine anymore. It's doing its own, it has its own life. Maybe how a mother feels about their child when their child leaves home. So, yeah.
Interesting. Um, were there any events in your life that you were not able, didn't want to, felt that you didn't include in the book?
Mm, yes. Some of them were just purely editorial. Like, I did write a lot of back and forth poetry with my father as a way of, I wanted to answer, my biological father was a poet, and I wanted to sort of learn his style and answer his poems in a kind of a continued sort of dialogue that I was already doing with some of the letters that did stay in. So a lot of the poetry the editor decided to remove. Um, I also had to leave out a pretty important event, and this was just to protect the privacy of my husband's ex-wife, the mother of Sydney, my stepdaughter. At the same, and it's a pretty important one, but it was just not, there's too many things happening at once. But around the time of the bicycle accident and the DNA discovery, she also became ill-equipped to take care of Sydney, who at that point was 18 years old. She had just graduated from high school. So we were suddenly caring full-time for an adult with intellectual disability, full-time, without any help from the mother. And this was my husband Dave's worst nightmare come true. And so he hit rock bottom at the exact same time I did. And we became incredibly incapable of holding one another up, because I was in my own personal hell, he was in his own personal hell, and I'm shocked that we made it through. So sometimes we talk about, like, whether there's a part two or an addendum to the book, because there was so much that we learned. And Sydney is in an incredible place now and thriving and has a job and lives 20 minutes from us. And but it was a nightmare in and of itself, that continued even on past the book through the pandemic. And so, yeah, it's hard to know which stories follow the narrative and which stories are, they're still just as meaty and important, but they would take the reader off on another path. So we decided that one was one of those.
If, and this follows along, if there was a part that you could rewrite, would you? And what part is that?
Hmm. No, I
No.
no, I wouldn't rewrite anything. To me, it's like it did it almost, it's again, it's sort of like out of my hands. It told its story, it did its thing. And I am a terrible editor too. I'm one of those people that, like, when I'm done, it's like I'm done. I want to put it away. So that's part of that, but my personality. But there's also just this feeling that um there's something else to tell now, and that story is played out.
Absolutely. Bernadette, I'm going to give you a chance.
Okay,
You
thank
won't
you.
have to overtalk me.
This is just a comment, Kimberly, from Linda, regarding your writing. Your words were so fluid to me, like the water that was a main character.
Thank you, Linda. I'll tell you a very cool little thing that just happened. And for those that have read the book, know how much water is a theme in this book, and how much my biological father, he was a sailor, and his whole story on the water. I just got asked yesterday to do another book club, and this one ends up on a sailboat with women. They actually want to live the book. She's going to create a whole curriculum around the book and have it lived out in real life on a sailboat. So, and I just met with her today, and I was like, sure, sign me up. But yeah, and and she hadn't even read the book yet. She just had seen the trailer, and she saw all the water themes, and she was like, I do these charter sailboat slash book club adventures for women, and I just feel like maybe we should meet. And we did, and it was like, oh, this is, I think my father, my biological father, is wanting to get me on a sailboat.
I
This
think
sounds
we are
like
going
an
to need the event
awesome
details for
experience.
that.
Yes. We need
Yeah.
to follow up.
Um, have readers interpreted your work in ways that surprised you?
Somebody told me alongside the, like, this is a love story. Someone else told me it's a story of forgiveness. And I definitely see that. And I think the obvious is a forgiveness, of my mother. And maybe that's how she interpreted it. But to me, it feels mostly a story of forgiveness for myself, forgiving myself for being imperfect and human and messy and vulnerable and fragile, and and saying yes to that, and going, oh my gosh, I think my life is actually better now that I've forgiven that and said, let's do this. Let's still just be messy, and let's get in there and live life, and not have to, polish the edges anymore. So I'm glad that she said that. But like I said, I think she meant my mom, and I don't ever feel like I needed an apology from her, like I said earlier. But for sure, there's been forgiveness in a lot of the relationships, just because when you dig in and find out, I tried my best to really represent the characters in the book. My brother, my mom primarily, and then Charlie's new family. My mom, my mom's relationship with Charlie, and my adopted father. I wanted to get close to them. And so I think whenever we do that and we sort of put on their shoes, we inevitably probably find some softening in our heart towards them too.
I agree. What is the most memorable feedback you've gotten?
Oh, I love this one. I did an event in Chicago, and I noticed a woman in the audience. She just was just crying, just crying. And at one point I just thought I should just stop this interview and go up to her. Are you okay? But she was crying and smiling and but I could tell something was really resonating with her. And she came up to me afterwards and pulled up her sleeve and she showed me this tattoo that she had just gotten on her forearm and it said and she said, I finally feel like because of your book, two things can coexist at the same time. And I feel like this is the lesson for the rest of my life. And your book helps me see that that's possible, that pain and joy can live alongside one another, that chaos and perfection can live alongside one another, that stillness and movement can live along. And she just, it opened up maybe something in her former life that was very black and white. And this is something that has really, even though I first learned it in my body, this is something that's assisted me in my life now for in how I think, how I philosophize. I really do feel like there's room now to go, yes, and two things. My husband and I get in a fight. Oh, you feel this way and I feel this way, and that's great. And they don't agree, and they both are true. So, I love that little tattoo that she showed me because if there is maybe another word of even what unfixed means to me, it's is and. It allows for the and.
Love it.
It's a great explanation. I'm going to break in here a minute, Deb.
Mhm.
One comment from Meg. I'm glad you explained Sid's mom. I wondered why the living situations changed. And then a
Mm.
question from Kelly. If your brother had not given you a DNA test, would you have gotten one soon? I can
Mm.
imagine your nervousness.
Yes, Kelly. I I was so scared too. I probably would have eventually, but I felt like that period of bed rest, it was such a long period of just digging into his more online information and then finally writing that letter to his family and there was the suspicion in me was very alive and vibrating. And like I said, this was all prior to the dizziness. And so I hadn't yet learned to regulate my nervous system. What I was doing was sharing the story compulsively with everybody, trying to find myself through their feedback or through how they received the story. I just didn't know how to land it myself. So I was trying to land it in everybody else. And I think it would have taken me longer to get it, but I think I would have eventually done it. Um, and it probably would have had the same reaction anyway, you know. Yeah.
Thank you. Does anyone else have any questions that they just haven't put in the chat yet? We could open it up for some questions before we jump back on some others that we have.
Not anymore. Yeah.
Rod, I'm going to put you on the spot because you had messaged me some really cool thoughts that you had and that you really enjoyed the book. And I would love for you to kind of share some of that, your takeaways with Kimberly, because it really resonated with me, the things that you shared. And I know you're not shy, so.
Thanks for outing me, Christy.
Hey, no problem.
So I did put a question in the chat, but I'll give you my feedback and reflections first. In so many ways, this first book choice for this book club like hit me like right in the gut or heart and head at the same time, because I for 3 years I worked in Michigan as a nature center director in Jackson at the Dahlem Conservancy. I'm the founding preschool director for the Little Acorns nature-based preschool.
Oh.
And that was the best job I ever had. And this book reminded me of that. But what's even more interesting is right around the same time as you, like 2020-ish, I decided that I was fed up with what was happening in the world, so I became a filmmaker.
Oh, wow. Wow.
And one of the films I'll share with anybody here in the meeting, I think Christy has gotten a link at some point. If not, Christy, I'll share it with you too. Un-American Justice is one of the documentary series I'm producing, and the proof of concept was released in 2023 and 2024 in film festivals and won 5 awards.
Wow.
And the plan is for Un-American Justice to be 6 full seasons, a total of 60 episodes, telling the stories of real life Americans who have suffered all different kinds of injustice and their view of the American dream.
Wow. Can I say something? I want to introduce you to my uncle, Chuck's brother, Rich Brower, who is a very well-known filmmaker in Michigan, and he has a fabulous crew of people. It's all about community and making good stories. There's nothing Hollywood or fancy about him. He is just doing it for the story. And if you're in Michigan, he should know about your work. Then the two of you might be able to help each other out some way.
That would be incredible. I accept.
Yeah. Okay, perfect.
I will put my email in the chat for you and for everybody else.
Perfect.
Feel free to share that with them. And I'd be happy to share the proof of concept with anybody who would like to watch it.
Maybe share that in the, can I just give you my email and then you can send it to me?
Sure.
I'm happy to just put it right in here. So anyone can email me.
Sure.
If
So it is a 26-minute short film. And the only thing I ask when you watch it is that you would provide feedback, because the feedback will inform the full 6 seasons.
Of course, that's essential. Reviews and feedback are essential. So we'll do.
Thank you.
I do have some more comments.
So I did have one question. Sorry. So in the chat, I asked the one word after after all the other things impacted me so much, the Michigan and that your role as a filmmaker. You mentioned the Ouroboros experience, and it's towards the end of the book, one sentence, and it's like you just snuck in this word, but it must have been a profound experience for you. Do you recall what that is?
I'm trying to remember what this was. It's funny because I wrote about the story of my mom saying my book gave birth to her, and I called it a matrilineal Ouroboros. So, but that's more recent. That was just like a month ago. I wrote an essay about that, but I'm trying to remember. It was probably a word I used in a scene that was trying to explain that sense of the snake eating its tail, but I don't remember the exact scene.
Well, the scene was like, it's hard to pick it out because it was probably like the 50th time you had given up on science and that you went to for help. And I think it was right after you talked with your mom. That's what it was. It was right after you had the I'm sorry, and she said, I'm sorry to you. It was right after that.
Yeah. And I think yes, it's flashing back to me now where I felt like this was more of the negative experience, if I remember correctly, if you're going to say like the snake eating itself, it was like I was just in this cycle that I needed to get out of. And, Unfixed largely came out of that, like I have to get out of this cycle because I'm basically just consuming myself by trying to pursue medicine, trying to find a cure, resistant to allowing this to just be part of my life. So I think that's interesting, but if it was probably, if I'm correct, I think it was the negative interpretation of, what that might actually look like in a life where you can't jump off the wheel of samsara.
That's pretty powerful. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Meg wanted to share 2 instances of how your book affected her. Her sister gave up the baby for adoption, and they finally met the baby about 9 years ago. Not a baby anymore, basically via DNA results. Pretty cool. And her mother-in-law suffers from Meniere's disease, and your final diagnosis seems like this may be something for her to look into.
Yes.
And then
There are overlaps in mal débarquement, which there's another term different than mal débarquement, but similar when something is a vestibular disorder goes on and on and on. It can become triple PD. And a lot of people with Meniere's end up with triple PD. And triple PD is sort of the long drawn out version of a dizzy disorder due to the neurological jumbling. So the central nervous system starts to misinterpret the signals of the vestibular system. So I do know some people with Meniere's and triple PD, and that might be something to look into.
And Christy just mentioned that her husband has that, and it's getting worse as he gets older.
Yeah.
And to change the subject, Linda said, "You are a beautiful woman, and I wonder how you deal/react to people who don't see your disease."
That was the hard, that's why I isolated. It was very much, I even from friends, I got to the point where I felt like, no, people don't understand this. And I was so tired of people saying, well, you look fine. And doctors, misinterpreting. And my fault too, because I would go in with my happy face and try to put on, the like I'm a good girl and this is my daddy kind of like I just was little mispleaser. But I didn't know how to honor what I was experiencing in relationship to other people when that was in those early days. So I just isolated. Now it feels like I don't need people to acknowledge it anymore because I don't acknowledge it much anymore either. I'm just aware. It's like, you know that you have legs or it's just part of you. So I don't feel like I don't isolate anymore. But early on, having an invisible disorder, there's two assaults. There's the living with it, and then there's the people that doubt or question or are persistently asking, "Are you better yet?" And it's such an unfortunate assault because you're already dealing with so much and it's already stripping your life of so much. And then the last thing we want is to also have the friendships and the communities fall away too. But I don't know anybody that has entered chronic illness that didn't have that a version of that, especially early on.
Thank you. I don't see any more questions in here at the moment.
Yeah, any other questions? We have about eight-ish minutes left, so I want to make sure that if anybody has any other comments, questions, while we have the amazing Kimberly here, this is your chance to ask.
We've got one from Heather. What was it like when you read Burial at Sea for the first time?
Remind me, what is Burial at Sea? Oh, his poem. I thought you were talking about like someone else's novel. Oh, yes, that poem. I mean, there's a few of those where it was so prescient and so beautiful. First of all, I think my first impression was the way he wrote it, and I have it even somewhere on my desk. But the indentation of the stanzas made it so that it was swirling in under the water. And I have this image in my head, even though his body was never found, I have this vision in my head of him when he, got hit on the head with a mast or whatever happened, that he descended through the water like that, where I want to imagine that it was graceful, like that poem, with the arms spread out like a seagull and soaring, soaring, soaring away. So, he had some unusual pieces that hinted at his own demise and that also suspected my existence. And so there's this, it was very unusual, the fact that there's a song on one of his albums on eBay called Have You Seen? And one of the chorus is, "I fear that I am the father of a son or a daughter, and I know that it never will be." And why did he suspect that he was a father? Is that something that most men suspect? And then write a song about it? So I don't know if I would go as far as to say he was psychic, but I think maybe living in that creative realm, and he was very much of a Renaissance man and being creative and breaking the rules. I think some intuition was happening there for him around his own exit and maybe around maybe me. I don't know. Or maybe there's other siblings out there. I don't know.
I have two questions actually. Okay, for three. Well, two questions, one statement. I don't read I don't read books, I audiobook. So I read like 80, well, listen to like 80 books a year.
Wow.
So this is my first book that I have read, physically read, because it's not an audiobook or ebook, whatever.
Yeah.
So yay me, I did it in 2 days and didn't fall asleep. So anyway, second, well, the first question is, did your dad know your father, not your biological, but did
Mhm.
he know that you weren't his? That's the first question. Number two, whatever happened to Charlie's house? I know you talked about the flooding, but did they ever have to tear it down or rebuild it?
Yeah. I don't know if my dad knew. I only know two stories around it. One that when I was very young, I was an infant, he told my mom that he looked at me and had a moment of like, is she? And then he felt like, oh no, she can read my thoughts and I don't want her to know those thoughts. And so he dismissed it. But it was enough for him to tell my mom that he had that little exchange with me where he thought, I can't even think this because I don't want her to worry. But then when I was 17, so fast forward all those years, he had my mom tell me the chance that he might not be my dad. He was a doctor. Maybe he could have gotten a DNA test. This was the 80s, so I don't know how easy that was, but he could have. And if he did, he never he never let me believe an out. I mean, not never, even after my mom told me that there was a question of it, I put it out of my mind. It was like it was as if it never happened. I never talked to him about it. I never talked to anybody about it. It was done. So yeah, I think most important to him was that he was my dad and that he was going to love me like that no matter what. So, and then as far as what was the second question?
The house.
The house. Doug and Donna Kramer, I think were their names. That story, that was one of my favorite chapters to write. I loved the mystery of that day and the generosity of their hearts. These two strangers that like wanted this to happen for me, even though they were in the middle of their own crisis. It was just so sweet. But I very deliberately, this was traumatic. And so when we were done, we exchanged thank yous and letters for about 6 months. And my sense is that they didn't, while in that period, they hadn't raised the home yet, but I think that's what was happening. And it felt like the decision was made that day. So I don't know. I have to go on Google Maps and find out if it's even still there.
Thank you, Kimberly. We have two more comments. One is Angela, who said it was a great book. Thank you for writing the memoir. You are an inspiration. And then Linda said, my last comment is that I give my highest compliment by giving my copy of your book to a friend, which I'll be doing.
Oh, that's so, yes, please pay it for it. Just give it away, or take it to your library. I trust that one of my dear friends, she calls it book bombing, and she's just like, you know what, this book needs to land in certain people's hands. So I'm just going to put it in doctors' offices. I'm just going to put it on seats on trains. She's like, I don't care. I'm just going to throw it all over the universe. So pay it forward.
I love it. I love it. Well, thank you, everybody. Kimberly, thank you so much for being with us tonight. Like I said, thank you for being our first author of this new book club. Is there any final comments you want to leave with our audience? And then I'll just wrap up some final housekeeping things, and then we will send you all on your way.
Yeah, I feel like there's the lasting message for me, and this is from my cells to yours, is that there really is peace in the storms of life. And it doesn't feel like it. It really doesn't. But I encourage all of us, and I say this to myself too, to pause long enough and just exhale and give it an opportunity to show up, because there is something that wants to hold us in our suffering. There is something, and I'm not talking about spiritual, or it can be, but it can be as simple as just the space between the molecules of our body that holds us, and there's a buoyancy to it, and I don't want to get all woo woo, but it feels like love. It feels like love. So I hope that message is something that people can get from my book and know that this isn't special to me. This is how life works.
Thank you for that. That's absolutely beautiful. And then I also want to say thank you again to Deb and Kelly and Bernadette for organizing this amazing event and helping lead it and ask the questions and just taking the charge on seeing clearly our community had a want and a need for this. So thank you so much. And everybody look out for an email in the next day or maybe Monday with our next 2 book choices, as well as I mentioned at the beginning, the link to a landing page that has all things book club, as well as a survey about tonight. And again, thank you, Kimberly, so much for being with us tonight, and I wish you all well.
Thank you all so much.
Have a good night, everybody.
Highlight of my month.
Awesome. Thank
Thanks,
you.
Kimberly. So nice to meet you.
You too.